one of the key benefits, we hope, is access to the Training for Vitals portal, and that is a place that will change in an ongoing way as we continue to add resources. And some of those resources that we're getting ready to upload in the next couple of weeks, in fact, are those marketing resources like the logo lockups and the email signatures. And with that, I will turn it over to Adrian, who's going to do an overview demo of the resources available in the Pill Trainer training portal. Adrian?
Thank you, Tracy. So yes, I'm going to do a demo now of the PillTrainer.com. This is the website that you will have already visited, most of you, to apply to become a registered trainer for this program. It's a collection of resources that's been put together over the last 6 months by education experts, trainers, peer coaches, teachers, and various other people involved in providing professional development for educators. So it's a very valuable set of resources. It draws on existing materials that Microsoft have already been involved with, for example, digital literacy curriculum, and provides a raft of opportunities for you as a trainer or a peer coach to build your own workshop materials around some of this content to add value to what you do already. It's not intending to replace what you do already. It is meant to be supplementary materials to help you build even more engaging and compelling workshops for your participants. So I'm going to do a live demo of the website. So the screen in a minute will flicker for a bit, and then we'll show my desktop. And I'm going to walk you through how the PillTrainer.com portal is structured and a very brief overview of the content in there. So I'm going to switch now to a live desktop. So your screen may flicker for a few seconds. And hopefully now you should be able to see the home page for PillTrainer.com. So once you've received your username and password, it's one username and password for all of us. Once you've received that information, you'll be able to log in, and this is the screen that you'll come to. And you can see we've set the portal up to be fairly straightforward in terms of access. So if I just scroll down the page a little bit here, you can see we've got some big buckets of content. The first piece there about it getting started really just gives you an overview of how the toolkit is put together. And then there's various different sections of resources that will help you to build out your training provision. So I'm going to go into some of those pieces with you now. So the Get Started portion really is just literally a bit of an introduction to you as a trainer about how this portal has been created and what's in it. Remember, this portal is intended to be used by trainers to build training programs. It's not necessarily something that you would give your participants access to. I think it's important to remember that this is for you as a value add to your work rather than something that you would use directly with teachers that you're training. And it explains that to you here in this Get Started section. The next area that we're going to quickly look at is called Best Practice. What we've done in this area is try to think of the main hot topics or the main talking points in education today that people will be asking you in your workshops that you are already aware of and working in. But this is just some up-to-date resources and thinking to help add value to what you do. So one of the key messages that we're hearing a lot about in education today is the changing paradigm. So how is the shift going on in schools and in education from talk and chalk, traditional approaches to teaching and learning, to something a bit more interactive and engaging and personalized for students? So in the Best Practice section, Changing Education Paradigm, you'll find several useful videos there, some famous faces, Ken Robinson, Bill Gates, for example, and some of you may know Bruce Dixon from the school program. So really some thinking there and some videos that you can watch, you can run in your workshops to get people to think and start thinking differently about education. Also in this section, there's a piece here about professional development best practices. This is drawn on the research that's been happening over the last 3 or 4 years, innovative teaching and learning research, which you may have heard about, and we'll be exploring in more detail in the next Virtual University on the 25th, I think it is, of April. But there's some information there from the ITL research program about professional development and what makes good professional development, some hints and suggestions for you there to further improve your already excellent practice. Then we have a section still in best practice on skills for school leaders. So another program that Microsoft has successfully facilitated in the last few years is the Innovative Schools program. And here you can find some information about that, including online resources for school leaders and a piece of and needs analysis called Partners in Learning School Research that Tracy will talk about later in this session. In here as well, there's a section for educators, 21st century skills for educators, and some information there about what are the skills that today's educators need to be able to work in the changing education paradigm. This is research-based, high-level overview type information. It's not a set of workshop materials at this point that you can use. It's just to help you frame some of the messages that you are already putting across in your workshops. The final section in best practice is around 21st century skills for students. Again, this is drawing on the ITL research program, but on this page as well is some handy links to some very useful Microsoft programs for students. For example, the Imagine Cup, that some of you may have heard of already, and the Kodu type competitions and games for students. So some resources there to link to for you to talk to teachers about in terms of students. So the best practice is really giving us a very, very quick, high-level overview of those 5 key areas of education today. The next section in the toolkit is called preparation. In here is really some suggestions, and they are just that. They're only suggestions. We know that already you are practicing and excellent trainers and teachers, so we're not trying to tell you or teach you how to do something better. We're just giving you some suggestions for adding value to what you do already, so please don't think that we're trying to tell you to do things differently. So there's a section here on the planning cycle. So one of the things that we have found in Experience Works is to have a very simple cycle for planning a professional development intervention. And there's some information there on the 5 stages of that planning cycle, starting with a learner needs analysis, which we'll look at a little bit more in today's session. And there's some information on that in here as well, as you can see. And then looking at the other pieces of the planning cycle. So, for example, how do you set compelling objectives and personalized objectives when you have a workshop of 30 or 40 or 50 teachers? And then managing and delivering and planning and delivering the actual training session, and then the evaluation of impact at the end of the session. So we walk you through here the sort of planning cycle as we have understood it to be successful. And it will probably coincide with what you're doing already. If there's some new ideas there for you, then that's great. In the preparation section as well, we have something on collaborative spaces and how important it is to have a virtual collaborative space to add value to your face-to-face workshops. For me, personally, as a trainer, I would never replace face-to-face workshops entirely, but I think it's very valuable to have an additional component that's online and virtual that can support the engagement after the workshop is finished. So there's some information there about, for example, Partners Learning Network, which most of you will know already, how to create discussion groups on that network for your training groups, some information about SkyDrive as well, in case that's something that's new to you, a shared online space for you and your participants to exchange resources. And some tips, really, just some general top tips from trainers that we've spoken to about how collaborative spaces can work, but also some things to watch out for. The final section in preparation is called Workshop Delivery Overview. And this gives you a very simple table that explains what is in the 3 workshops that this toolkit has resources to support. So it walks you through really level 100, how long that workshop would take, more or less, if you did it as it was in the toolkit. Some useful facilitator guides and resources to support your planning and delivery of those workshops. And likewise, level 200 and also level 300. So that's really your index, if you like, for what's in the workshop section of this toolkit. The most important section, I guess, is where the meat of the resources are. So as we mentioned on last week's session, there's 3 levels of workshop resources that we have in the toolkit. The first one, level 100, is around digital literacy. The second one is around teaching with technology, level 200, the integration of technology into teaching and learning. And level 300 is around 21st century learning design and how can teachers use some of the resources and research that's out there to better plan and prepare learning activities to students to build 21st century skills. And each of those workshop resources has 3 sections to it. The first one is some kind of core curriculum, and we're going to look today at level 100 and level 200 in more detail, so I won't dive too deeply just now. But a core curriculum component, for example, in level 100, digital literacy curriculum, and it tells you about that and how to access it on that page. The second part of each workshop is what we're calling consolidation activities. These are a range of resources that you can use as they are, or you can adapt them in Word format, so you can adapt them and edit them and localize them, that help you add value to, in this case, the digital literacy curriculum with some additional workshop-based materials, and we'll look at those a little bit later in some more detail. And the third part of the workshop here is what we're calling educator tutorials. And these are really sort of just-in-time, one-off, very short, self-access Word documents, again, so you can localize and edit them, adapt them, that help you to give teachers something. If somebody's in the class in your workshop saying, I just want to know how to use OneNote, or I just want something on project-based learning, then you can very quickly give them one of these Word documents, which are a simple 1 or 2 page resource that they can either print off or use online to help guide them through, in this case, for example, using free tools and Learning Suite for project-based learning. So there's a wealth of resources there in each of the workshops that you'll be able to explore in more detail after the session when you get the login. Another section in the toolkit is called measurement and evaluation. So what is critical in any teacher training, professional development program, as you will already know, is not only having clear objectives at the beginning and working out what the current state of play is for each of your participants, but also post-workshop and further down the line, being able to evaluate the impacts of the training. So in this section, measurement and evaluation, there's lots of resources for you to help you build some evaluation tools to support your workshops. So there is a workshop evaluation in Word for each of the workshops, again, that you can use and adapt to edit as you see fit. There's information to deeper evaluation tools, for example, the Pill School research, which we'll look at later, and other things such as action research programs and that kind of thing. There's lots of information about deeper research, and as I mentioned, partners in Learning School research as well, which we'll look at shortly. So that's the research, the measurement and evaluation part of the toolkit. The last section is what we're just calling product training. Quite often in workshops, people are expecting to be taught just how to use a Microsoft product. It's a Microsoft workshop or Microsoft supported or aligned workshop, and people are expecting to know how to use products by the end of that session. So although our message is very much about pedagogy and very much about teacher learning, there is a section in here that says if you just want someone to be able to use Montage or web apps, then there's resources in there for you to help them to understand how to use those particular products. For example, this one is about Bing, and you can see there's plenty of information there and links to further information about how to use Bing in the classroom. As Tracy said at the start in her introduction, this is a constantly building and evolving toolkit. It's not going to be a one-off finished piece of work. This is the first iteration. We've released it to a small number of NGO partners in January, and you are going to be the next set of people who get to access this resource. And we very much value your feedback on it. It's important to us that we are constantly updating the resources based on what is working for you and what is not working for you. So it's critical to us that you don't consider this a finished product and that you provide your feedback, give us suggestions about what content you'd like to see in there, tell us how you've used the content, tell us how you've modified it and adapted it, and keep coming back because updates will be regular on this site. So it's a very quick overview of the toolkit. As I said, at the end of this session, you will get your username and password and be able to explore it further yourself. Later in this session, we're going to look at level 100 and level 200 in a little bit more detail. But for now, I'm going to hand back to Tracy to walk us through the next few minutes of this session.
Thanks so much, Adrian. There is a tremendous amount of resources available to you all there, and take a look and provide us feedback